Hello everyone, it's Tianna again. Welcome back. I want to start off by saying that the market can be pretty noisy, but good levels act like a filter. Today, I'm taking you through the levels my husband shared in the community this week and showing you how they cut through the noise to reveal the clearest entries of the week. So this is the ES futures chart from December 8th. This was Monday, and we had key levels. Key entry point high this day was 68.87. This blue line here. Our key entry point low was 68.73.50. And this vertical blue line here was our 9:30 open. Overnight, we kind of chopped back and forth along the key entry point. If you had waited to the open, which is what I did on this particular day, there was what we call a wifey trade. So you had your red, green, red under the EMA, and it was off of the key entry point. So it was some confluence there. Confirmation that this was a trade to take. So I personally entered this one tick below the previous red candle. I got a few points and then I got knocked out. I did re-enter on the second entry short. So if you see this push up, push back down, push up, hammer down off of the EMA, I went a tick below that entry as well. So that was a second entry short. And you could have rolled that all the way down to the bottom key entry point and gotten about 12 points or so if you took either of those trades. Let's see here. We then had a breakout pullback of the bottom key entry point. So we broke out, we pulled back, and then if you waited for a signal candle, you would have gotten one here. If you went one tick below, you could have got in at 68.72 and rolled that down to your first major pullback, which was at about 68.59. It actually did continue to go lower and lower, but this was a significant pullback. Actually made another second entry short, but you could have gotten 13 points about if you rolled that down to the bottom. So those were the two best entries. I gave you three entries of the morning. Before 9:30, you would have been out of all of those trades. So I personally just took those two, and once I had my goal, I stopped on that day. So let's go over to Tuesday and see what we have there. This chart is from December 9th, 2025, ES Futures. This is the overnight session here. This vertical blue line here is the 9:30 open, and we have our key entry points that were called, which was 63.5, and then the low was 68.39. We had this push through the top key entry point, and it made a second entry long. So I thought off the EMA, and I took this trade and I lost. This was overnight, and then I decided that's okay. I will come back in the morning and try during normal hours. So you did get a few shorts off of the key entry point high that could have gotten you anywhere from like 5 to 10 points. If you waited to the open, we were in the center of the range, so that's a clue to just wait until you get some price action off of the key entry points. We had a breakout here. We pulled back, but it did not give you a strong signal candle to go long. It actually, if you had gone short and stayed back, you could have rolled this down for about 5 points. That was at about 10 o'clock. At about 10:48, you had two more touches at about 10:30 and then 10:48 to get 5-6 points there. We didn't break out of the top key entry point until about 11 o'clock. It gave you a beautiful second entry long off of the EMA and the key entry point. So confluence there, confirmation. We had a push down, push up, push back down. If you go there at 68.66, you could have wrote it up for about 6-7 points. And then it kind of just chopped it around at the top. So you could have grabbed, 5 points here, 5 points there. We did break back in under the key entry point high. And you could have grabbed a few points, but this was a choppy day. This was a day where if you didn't enter correctly, or put your stop correctly, you could have gotten chopped up, or you could have caught a move like this hammer off the key entry point high, and if you stayed back, you could have got 10-12 points off of that. If you stayed back completely, you could have gotten about 20 points off of that as it tried to make its way down to the bottom key entry point. It didn't quite make it. It came up short about 5 points, but you could have gotten about 20 if you stayed back and stayed in it for the long run. This is our chart for Wednesday, December 10th. We had a key entry point high of 68.6475 and a key entry point low of 68.51. At the 9:30 open, which is this blue vertical line here, we were forming a second entry short. So if you saw that as a push up, push down, push back up, you had a candle off of the EMA, or you could have waited for the lower high and entered at around 68.4150, and it rolled. You could have rolled that down for about 10 points. Then at about 9:45, we had a double touch of the top key entry point. I'm sorry, I'm saying top. This is actually the bottom key entry point we had already broken out. And then if you had gotten in below that candle at about 68.48, you could have rolled that down for about 6 or 7 points. We then had a lot of touches. So if you had a big enough stop, like a 2-point stop above, if you had survived, if you had entered one of these hammered down and had a big enough stop, you could have entered, let's say at around 68.48. You could have rolled that down for about a 13-point move. We again attempted to touch the top key entry point. We missed it by about 3 ticks. If you had decided to go here, you could have got in at 68.47 and rolled that down again for about 12-13 points. We then broke out the top. We're at about 11 o'clock in the day. This was a FOMC day. So I am going to speed ahead and show you what happened if you played off of the key entry points on after the news. So per our prop firm that we use, you can trade a minute before you need to be closed and a minute after you need to be closed. So this trade would have triggered at 14:03, so you would have been safe. It touched the key entry point, rejected off. If you had entered that trade at about 68.54, you could have rolled that up for 20 points to 68.74 before it came back. It then touched the key entry point low again and gave you a hammer up. You could have entered again at 68.54, and this time it ran up to 68.86, so about 30 points on that move. It did come back down and tested the bottom key entry point again. So if you had entered above the green candle, you could have gotten in at about 68.55, and if you stay back, this thing kept going. And so 68.55, we're going to just call it here at 3 o'clock. 68.55 to 69, we'll say 6,900 for about 45 points. So those were all key entry points that were called in the community Wednesday morning before the open at 9:30, before the 9:30 open. So yeah, you could have had a great day off of those key entry points. Okay, now we have the ES futures chart for Thursday, and our top key entry point was called at 68.72.75, and our bottom key entry point was 68.34.25. I did trade the overnight because I did get alert that there was a touch or a near my key entry point. So I originally went long off of this candle here, and I lost. But then once I saw that this candle was breaking below those stems, I entered here and I did catch 25 points on this move. This move though actually went about 50 points. We started the move at 68.72, And then it went all the way down to at about 68.18. So yeah, that was a great move. Then we did have a wifey setup here. We had to push through the EMA and the key entry point, pull back, and then a green candle up. So that was at about 4 a.m. if you were an overnight trader. But if you had entered that trade, you could have entered at 68.43 and rolled it back up to the top key entry point for about 30 points. We then had, if you were trading before the open, we had a breakout and then a pullback. Now, you might have been tempted to go long, and I understand if I had saw this, I probably would have gone long as well. So you could have lost that when that next candle ticked you in. But then it pushed back through the top key entry point, and you could have gotten in at about 68.71 and then rolled that down for about 9 points. This is the 9:30 open. If you wait for a key entry point touch, you get a breakout here. And the same thing kind of happens. It breaks out, pulls back, and then it gives you a nice signal candle. So you could have lost that if you decided to go long here. I do like when my green, red, green are all above the key entry point where they, don't break back below. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but I do. It seems like they do better when they stay above that support level. So, but if you had waited, you got a second entry short here. So you had to push up, push down, push back up to the key entry point high. You could have entered on this candle here, which was a hammer down. You could have entered at about 68.71. And that gave you a great move all the way almost to the bottom key entry point. It missed it by about 3 or 4 points, but you could have easily gotten 20, 30 points on that move. And that brings us to about 10 o'clock. We had a lot of price action movement. I actually didn't trade because I had won the overnight trade, but this is a second entry long off the EMA. If you had gone a tick above there, 68.61, and then you could have rolled it for about 10 points up to the key entry point, but it actually broke out. But your target probably would have been the key entry point top. So yeah, that is how this week went, playing off of key entry points that were given in the community this week. If you are interested in joining the community, there is a link in my bio, or you can always send me a message if you have any questions. I feel free to ask away and I will answer. I hope you guys had a great trading week. Hope you have a great Friday trading, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.